Welcome to Cutting Edge Web Content Development, the podcast where we delve into the world of CMS systems and their crucial role in website and web content development. In each episode, we'll explore the reasons why founders, CEOs, CTOs, and CMOs of web content development companies need CMS systems to thrive in the digital landscape. Get ready to uncover the secrets behind successful website management, content creation, and seamless user experiences. Here's your host, Jonathan Ames.
Welcome to Cutting Edge Web Content Development, a podcast by Better CMS. Today, we're delighted to welcome Thiago Pochta, Director of SEO at Sixt. Welcome, Thiago.
Welcome, Jonathan. Great to be here.
Hey, I'm really impressed with your background. I'd like you just to tell our listeners a little bit about some of the projects you worked in and how you got started in SEO, just to give them an idea of your background.
Of course. Well, as everyone else in the field, I didn't go to college for SEO or anything similar. I started as a software engineer in an agency making sites, and the SEO team needed someone to build dashboards back then. That was in 2008. And that's how I got my foot into the area. So I started to create dashboards, automate some things. Data Studio was not a thing back then still, so we needed to create things from scratch. And then I became the most tech-savvy person in the SEO team. And one of the biggest difficulties that we had was to speak with developers, how to do things, what's the difference between a 302 and a 301 and how to implement it. So I became that person to contact them, which in the end was very handy for me in my career to start working with SEO. So I worked in that agency for almost 8 years. Then I left to work in a client. So I went to go in-house. That was a fantastic experience. It was very daunting as well because all my experience was in consulting, and now all of a sudden I had to do the things I was telling my clients to do. That was a very interesting moment. That experience was short-lived in the end. And the most interesting thing for me back then was that this business was speaking to small business. It was sort of a QuickBooks. And I decided, you know what? Why not try myself some of these ideas of owning a business? And that's how I started to do my own things. I defaulted on going what I knew and where my network was. So I started to do SEO consulting. On the side, I started a few different projects. So I built my own tools. I built my own content sites. I failed in most. I succeeded in a few. Those were very, very interesting. Both experiences were very nice. And yeah, I worked then with, if you consider everything, I worked with brands that only needed branded traffic. That's strange to do SEO. I also had then to do SEO for motorboat oil company. Very niche. Did for very tech-savvy people. And I think maybe one project that is worth highlighting is when I started doing SEO consulting, I came across these guys and they hired me. They were a very early stage startup. They hired me to do their SEO, so to say. So I created my traditional audit documents with other recommendations. Here's what you need to change, yada, yada. It was like a 30, 40-page document. I had a presentation where I showed them what they needed to do. Okay. Like 2 weeks later, these guys call back and okay, I know how this is going. So now they're finally getting a look at the document and let's see where this goes. Very common. And in the end, the question was, all right, so we did 95%. I just need to understand how do I set up this sitemap XML thing. Sorry, what? Yeah, they had done 95% of my recommendations in like 2 weeks. Yeah, and that's why I looked at them. I said, scratch the contract that we have. I want in. You guys are serious. And that's how I got into my own big business, so to say. So SEO bought my way into the business. And like 7 years later, we sold that business. It was in March this year. So I exited. It was a very cool experience.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting because I think that's emblematic of the fact that many brands either don't understand really what goes into executing an SEO project and the amount of work that happens to take recommendations or audit and actually implement it is a lot of developer hours, which are very expensive, a lot of content teamwork, probably a lot of back and forth questions like, hey, what do you mean by this? Yeah. And so amazing to see a company is able to implement that quickly. Yeah. That gives me hope.
Well, that's why you understand when I say, you know what, you guys are serious, I want in.
Yeah. That's great. No, in your current role at Sixt, obviously a huge brand known worldwide for car rentals and such. You have to do SEO in a very international scale. And this is something that was interesting when we first discussed doing a podcast episode and you talked about, topics, the idea of, enterprise versus startup SEO. So SEO is not the same in every instance. I mean, here you talked about how quickly someone's able to implement SEO recommendations, but also just from the standpoint of their team. What do they have access to as far as resources? Mm-hmm. Persons, especially in their experience with SEO. So really excited about this concept today. Let's talk about this. What are the main differences between managing SEO for a startup versus, say, an enterprise level company?
I'd say that the consulting part of my career helped me a lot it helped me in both, but it helped me a lot in the startup business because everything is so agile. So you discover a new initiative, a new opportunity, you go there, you test it fast and you measure it. And if it works, you can scale up or you just kill it altogether. So things are very hectic in a good sense, I'd say. Very similar to how things work in an agency, where I have to go very, very deep on the almost all details possible for everything. So in an agency, I knew every stupid small detail for robots attacks, for sitemap XML, everything. And in a startup life, you have to go very deep in very different models and very different, let's say, activities. And I have ADHD, and that very, very much excited me. So having all these different topics. So I very much enjoyed that. And when I started to work for a big enterprise, I began to feel I won't say the weight, it's more of a responsibility to an extent, because if in a startup you are able to test, you don't, to an extent, you don't have much to lose as well. So people are also more forgiven if you make mistakes. Whereas if you are a big brand, things need more time. They need they need to be digested more before they become something bigger. So I needed to learn how to live with that. But on the other hand, I worked in a very big agency and I didn't have an SEO team that was as big as we have here at Sixt. We have 13 different SEOs working in-house, and not counting copywriters, software engineers. No, those are SEO managers, these 13 people. And that is fantastic. And that's not something I had never seen before. So I love this. I love the ability to have so many people, so we can go, again, very deep in many different topics. So we have very deep specialists, both in SEO skill set and in product skill set as well, like our own products, how do they work, and depending on the countries where they are available, etc. As well as where before I had to almost create a business plan and then, I don't know, bribe someone to have a small subscription from SEMrush. Here I have access to very interesting tools and also different teams that can help me creating these tools that I don't have or that need to be customized. So it's a complete different experience. It's a complete different type of excitement. Like I can go very deep and I can see the thing coming from the beginning to the end and everything in between. I think a good example I can give is there was at one point someone in my team that came from an agency. So they worked years and years in an agency, and then they came here saying something like, oh, it would be very nice if at all the branch pages, we would have a video that shows people how to get to the car return location. I said, yeah, that is very cool video, very user-friendly. Cool. So do it. What do you mean do it? Yeah, now you're in-house. Now you have to do it. At least pilot, you have to do it yourself. You have to create a few videos, you have to put in the pages, you have to measure, see the impact, and then we can see if a different team can take over that. So it's a very different experience.
Yeah, no, I think this is an important discussion for people at all different sizes. If you are a startup, it's interesting. If you do get to the point where you're able to scale up, it'll be important to know these factors. If you are an enterprise, it may be helpful to you to look. I mean, you already know what it's like working in enterprise, but it may be helpful to look back because you may have some things you can learn from a startup environment that may help you do things faster. And for those that are in mid-level who are trying to scale up to a larger enterprise size, there's a lot of growing pains there, and it's helpful to know we've been doing things a startup way, and now we have to transition to this enterprise way of doing it. It's a change of mindset too, just like you were just saying. Now I don't have to convince people to get a subscription to SEMrush. Now it's like, all right, I want to test these huge projects. I'm do the pilot programs, make sure it works, then hand it off to another team and say, all right, now scale this up. This has worked. Now put this across the entire enterprise. So very important points for all three of these audiences, mid-level, startups, and enterprises.
One other thing that helped me a lot in my consulting times was learn how to make good presentations and read the room, see who are the decision makers, give them the information that they want to see, the format that they want to see, because now I am basically advocating for SEO inside the company, and I need to convince different teams that they need to do what we want. And why is that important? Because in SEO, like we were talking in the beginning, as companies implementing things, they see like, oh, I hired an SEO and then I bought a PPT, I bought a PDF, and that's it. That's the SEO, right? No, that's just the scratching the surface. Now you have to do all of that. So having the resources to pull these things off, content, design, UX, tech, it's hard, even in a big enterprise. Sometimes even more so, because now I need to convince people. So these type of skills also help me a lot.
Yeah. No, that's an important difference. Is the larger your organization gets, the more you have to get buy-in from various people, being able to read the room, understand what do people want, how convinced are they of this plan, and know who you need to influence. It's very important, because nothing is more heartbreaking as an SEO than having something is going to work, and yet you have some blocker who says, no, we can't do that because of this bureaucratic reason. What? So yeah, very important before that happens to kind of understand who those people are, what their interests are. So, all right, let's talk about this transition from startup to enterprise. What are the adjustments? Let's say you're one of these growing companies. You're starting to get bigger. More and more people are coming together in your organization, having a hand in your SEO. What are some of those changes you need to be aware of? Besides, you just mentioned one, multiple people and getting buy-in. What are some others? Something
that I had to learn when I was creating my agency. So after I started to do consulting on my own, things just got to a point where it got out of hand and I needed more support. And it was easy in the beginning. I got my friend. It's now my business partner. So we split the work, we split everything there, but still it got too big. And then it got to a point where, okay, now we need to hire externally. And for a consulting gig, that's very hard, because in a way, I felt like the clients hired my kind of knowledge, the way I did things. But now I needed to train someone to not do exactly what I wanted, but achieve the same result from their means, from their ways. And letting go that control, that to me was very, very hard. And it was like my own precious thing that I created, the processes, the documents, the promises to the client that I did when I was pitching the project to them. Now I needed to hand over to someone else. So making sure that I had the manuals set up. But I believe more importantly was learning that I needed to actually tell the people where I wanted us to be and not give them the way. Because I felt like I just wanted to tell them, this is how I would do it. So you do it my own way, So letting it go, letting go the control, letting go the power, so to say, of the decisions and etc. That was very hard, but also very, very rewarding when I saw that people sometimes didn't even achieve the objectives that I had set to them, because they found something else that was even more important. And I also feel the other way around when they didn't, when they fell short. And it was my promise to the client before. So having to deal with that was hard. So I believe the things that we did there, and now I'm also transferring this knowledge here to the team at Sixt, is creating the proper plans, the proper processes, the guidelines, the do's and the don'ts, even more values. What values do we have as a company? Where do we go? What we don't do, no matter what,
Basically, what you're saying is, one, it's letting go of all the control yourself and letting other people, delegating work out and giving them or empowering them to be able to own the final result rather than telling them all the ways to do it. And also creating, the documentation maybe to pass this off to other people so that you can scale it. Those were two aspects of scaling up.
Yes. And I think also learning people skills. That was a very important. I can't remember. Actually, I was thinking about this morning. I remember whenever a boss would tell me that I needed to learn sales tactics. I'm like, I don't want to be in a store selling stuff to people. I don't like to being annoyed by salespeople. Like, what are you talking about? It took me years to realize that actually, no, if you're negotiating a deadline, in a way, you're selling your point of view. You're selling why that's important. Why maybe you should wait or do it differently. And everything that comes with that. So being clear in your communication, knowing when to talk and when to not talk, when to stop talking, when to listen, when to, again, read the room. Anyways, so everything I mentioned plus these people skills really helped me. And I believe someone that is going through this phase is going to benefit from learning. But it's not called growth pains for out of nowhere, because they are pains. It hurts. It really hurts.
These are good points. I mean, truthfully, every business that scales up is going to have these issues. And even if you are coming new into a business, you're used to maybe enterprise level and you have to go to a startup, there are growing pains there as you suddenly learn you don't have all these resources. Or the other way around, coming from a startup to an enterprise and adjusting to the ways you were talking about, selling your idea, delegating power, being able to have these operating procedures that everyone can follow to work together. Really, really important in overcoming those growing pains. Let's take this as a spectrum here. When you're starting as a startup, let's say it's a company that's starting as a startup and is growing to mid-level and then maybe over a couple of years scales to enterprise size. How would you align your business goals at these different stages in SEO to make sure that things are getting done, that your SEO is following the growth of the business at startup, at mid-level, at enterprise stage?
One thing everyone that works in SEO knows is that it's hard to get prioritization. And the best analogy that I ever thought about was that when trying to explain this is investing in SEO is very, very similar to investing in your retirement. You have to do it. It hurts a little bit now, and it will hurt you for a long time, but then you will pay off. And the longer you wait to start investing, the more expensive it will be in the end. So having that mindset of, first, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It is important that we do it. It's like thinking about performance. It's like cutting our nails. You have to continuously doing it. It's not something you do once and then forget about it. So always having this mindset of it's always on. It's not. Yeah, SEO is something that should be always on. Depending on the initiative, you can focus more here or there, depending on the time. But considering, let me give a step back. Think of it being always on, but you have to start from a solid base, which I always say it is your keyword research. Wow, there's something that I haven't heard in a long time that just came across my head here is personas. I haven't heard people talking about personas in a long time. But yeah, in a way, because I also think the concept of personas was a little bit hyped for a long time. So think about the keyword that your potential customers are looking for and focus on that. Don't steer away too much. So for example, on Conta Azul, the business I worked for, so similar to QuickBooks, as I said, one thing that helped us a lot to gain customers was a spreadsheet for cash flow. Our system was a cash flow system. So why would I give them a spreadsheet? Well, because they need to start somewhere. And once this spreadsheet becomes complicated, then they need our system. But that's good because then they're in a different maturity. But still, I was focusing always on their needs. And that's where I started. Also, I think if you think about it and you expand it a little bit, the concept of pillar pages, of hub pages, however you want to name it, it's exactly this. So what are the main issues that our customer has? So you have one very complete content for that. And then what are the fringe content that is related to it? That's something you will always be building. So when you have it always on, that is the thing that you are always building and always that you're always building. Having constant reports where you're always mentioning the progress is very important as well. It sure opens to some questions, especially when there is a blip in rankings. So, we were position 15, 12, 9th, 5th over the course of 3, 4, 5 months. Now we're 25. What happened? Well, I don't know. Let's wait. And eventually we'll see it. But being the person that people can trust because you are open, saying, I don't know. You're open saying, because of this test that I saw, or this thing, or my gut feeling tells me that this is important and I believe we should try it. So being very transparent, being someone that people can trust in that sense is going to pay off well, especially when these things happen. So you lose rankings, people tend to freak out, or there's an algorithm update. People tend to, now you need to stop everything you're doing. You need to analyze it and understand what we need to do differently, or wait. It's not like that, So have this solid base. Don't steer away from it too much. Be consistent and transparent with the results, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's shift gears into tactics then. So at the startup phase, that's typically when most people think of keyword research. Is keyword research something that kind of becomes less and less important over time, or even at the enterprise stage, is it something that's still important?
No, I think it's super important. Truth be told, if your product is very similar over the course of 100 years, like here, of course it did change by including products like car subscription, car sharing, things like that. So these are new clusters, new fields that you need to study, and you need to conduct the keyword research, new countries, new models, everything. You need to expand on it, but they tend to not change too much. However, the related questions around it, that changes. So you need to be always looking at for what people are searching for here and there. It does change a lot if you're talking about e-commerce, because then basically every new product line that you have, every new category, and new thing that your sales, your purchase team decided or found interesting, that's a new keyword research. That's something new, category page, new filter, new facets that you need to consider. So that is, depending on the industry, this can be very, very dynamic or very solid, and you just need to expand on it over time. But you have to understand.
Okay, what about personas? So you mentioned that. Typically, I would think of that as something that comes up maybe mid-level or enterprise, because in the beginning, you're just trying to understand which keywords work. Is it something, when do you know when it's time to start looking at these personas in your SEO?
From my experience, I learned that these is more a question of how mature your product teams are, because the best personas I've ever seen being created came from UX teams, UX research teams, and not from SEOs, I'm sorry, myself included, and not from social media. I think we all can weigh in, we can all show things that can enhance, it can enrich this persona, but you need to have someone that has the ability to go out there, to go to the street and find the people and talk to them openly, try to gather as much information as you can from the actual user, from the people, and not everyone has this ability as much as or as good as UX research people, because they just study this for a living, literally. And what I did do for one startup that was very, very interesting was based on the personas that they had created. So they had everything from the needs, the use cases, the age, and everything. Based on this, I looked at what are the use cases and where which are the sites where these people usually find these type of answers. For example, if someone is looking for a very short, nowadays maybe this might make less sense or more, I don't know. Let's say you are living in a city where it's cheaper, but you are working somewhere and now you have to return to the office. So you want to just have someone that you can crash for like 2 or 3 days a week or something similar. You don't want to spend a lot. So you're probably going to go to a, what is it called in English? When you have like it's a WG in German. It's sort of a hostel, yeah. But like student houses, shared apartments. Yeah, you know what I mean. So that is something, for example, that I would consider. So if you say, oh, our 30%, 20% of our customers are people who actually just come to the city for a short time because they're working here, but they actually live what they consider home somewhere else. I need to find where these shared apartment types of sites are, because that is related to these persona. Again, I think this is where the SEO perspective can come in from a very well-built persona. And I have seen this types of studies from personas being done very well in very early stage startups, where they were understanding the industry, understanding the customer, even deciding if they were going to pivot or not, all the way to very, very large enterprises. So I think as soon as you have someone that likes doing this and can do a good job and can also sell this internally in a good way, I think you should do it.
Let's switch now to the idea tactically of how to allocate your resources. So in a startup environment, typically it's you don't have a lot of resources, so not hard to allocate. But as you start getting bigger, how do you decide where to allocate those resources and what's most important?
There's a lot of opportunity thinking, I'd say, because you have to be very aware of what's going on inside the company and outside. So you need to be living there. This is something that I really love about working in-house. So you are actually talking to the people who are selling it, who are doing it, who are listening to the customers and everything. Something that is, while you can do in an agency, it is harder to get. One thing that I hated to do when I was working in an agency was doing forecasts for my clients, because I always said, I cannot promise anything, I will never do it. However, I learned that over time, you have to say something, even if you add lots of asterisks to it. Also, something that I learned is that we SEOs, because we have so much data, it is very easy for us to be fixated on this data. And if I'm doing a forecast, I'm doing the best freaking forecast there is. So I'm going to do, how many content pieces we are going to deliver. This is how much time it takes. This is where we should go, etc. Whereas other teams guesstimate things a lot. This should be 20% increase based on, I believe it's 20%. Feels good. Exactly. And creating these forecasts really help you to understand where are the actual opportunities and also the difficulties and uncertainties to prioritize it. So I like to do the, I believe it's not named risk. No, basically for every opportunity, we say, what is the potential? What is the risk? What is the, how much cost and how certain are we of that? And of course, you will start with the ones that have the highest benefit, highest opportunity, and least risk or least effort. But also you need to be very aware of what other teams are doing. Maybe there's a new technology they are willing to test, or there's a new project inside a company that you can squeeze in something that was once very hard to do. Now it's easier. So being able to navigate through different teams, be always on. I don't know how many channels I'm in Slack just to know what's going on, even in areas that are not directly related to mine. But if I can squeeze a SEO project in, I'm using that opportunity because I need to take all resources that I can get.
No, that's really important, is being able to switch from a small scale to larger and evaluate these various projects that you have using a framework, like you said, where you evaluate the risk, the cost, how certain or uncertain you are that it will deliver those results, and then be able to prioritize. Whereas when you're in a startup environment, you can only focus really on one or two projects at a time. And so there's not a whole lot of choice. Simply, I know this needs to get done, then that needs to get done. So as you get a bigger, you really you have multiple teams. You can assign them to different things, and you have to prioritize lists. I like also what you mentioned about being flexible. This is something I think a lot of larger enterprises maybe could learn from, is where are those opportunities that are happening? Is there someone out there listening for Dev is launching this new framework, and a new framework could really allow us some great SEO opportunities here, but you have to be listening for that and know, all right, here's our chance to, when they're switching frameworks, to have a bunch of these changes go into place that are going to potentially help us improve our rankings. So yeah, having the regularity of looking for those things. I don't know. I'm guessing that the larger you get, the more regularly you have to be looking for those opportunities and reevaluating the position of your projects. Would you say that's true?
That's true. Yes.
Yeah. So really good points there. I think that one of the things that people look at when they're growing is, how do I make these changes? When you see growth happening, how often do you reevaluate where you're at like in a large enterprise like Sixt, just to give us an idea, those who are not in a large enterprise? Is it quarterly or monthly or weekly or?
So we set yearly goals for us, but we know that the closer the timeline, the more certainty we have about the result that we are going to give. And of course, when we're projecting for a year, gets like a little bit more fuzzy towards the end, and we reevaluate this every quarter. Yeah. We use OKRs, and we use that to see. Something that we also try to do, something that is very hard for SEOs to do with OKRs, is someone at some point wants to have a ranking result as an OKR. And that's very hard for you to say, because it will take you the full quarter to create the demands, create the content, whatever it is, implement it if you're lucky. To have that done by the end of the quarter, that means you will only see this result in the next quarter if you're lucky, or maybe in the following. So I try to use a yearly goal for our rankings, our results, or visibility results that we want to achieve. But then on our quarters, we evaluate using then the leading metrics. Ranking is a lagging, we use a leading metric. So if we say we wanted to have, in order to achieve these, we believe we will need 1,000 content pieces, or we'll need 5 split tests to be ran every 3 months. I don't know. Those are my leading metrics. Those are the things that I can use to measure if we are moving towards these targets or not. I do not commit on the ranking results. I commit on these leading metrics.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think with startups, you're much more focused on things like the rankings, and as you scale up, things slow down a little bit, and you do have to have things like your leading metrics and say, all right, how many content pieces or, how many A/B tests, like you said, are we going to do? And we believe doing these will then get us to, over several quarters, the ranking results that we want. So yeah, good point.
Yeah, just tagging along on what you said, Sixt has been doing SEO for at least 15 years. So there's a lot of stuff that has been covered already. That is why things are slower, because now we are looking at the very big head terms. And moving rankings on these terms take a long time and a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good points. As you go upscale from these low ranking, or I'd say low competition, long tail keywords up to these high ranking, head keywords that are very difficult to get to, then things are going to slow down as far as your production schedule, and the amount of effort necessary is bigger. That makes total sense. Let me ask you something just about things you've learned in your career. If you could go back in a time machine and talk to yourself at the very beginning of your career, what things have you learned now that you wish you would have known then?
I've listened to many podcasts of yours. I knew this question was coming, yet I am not prepared.
There's a lot of things. I mean, you can mention a couple. You learn things. Like for instance, I wish that I would have known to network more at the beginning of my career. Beginning of my career, I thought if I just have the greatest skills ever, I'll do great. And I didn't realize that networking was really important. Connecting with people, both for learning as well as for opportunities. It's just something I didn't know about early in my career. I wish I would have known that. But
something that I've always struggled with, I don't know if this is worth mentioning, feel free to cut it, but I was only properly diagnosed with ADHD when I was 31 years old. So for me in the beginning, it was very, very hard to be consistent. Now that I'm treated, it is a lot better. But I did not even know that this was a problem. So I had to, if I could go back, I would tell me to try to be more consistent, try to understand what are the things that make me avoid such and such tasks, because there's maybe something important behind it that I'm avoiding, and take risks. So I waited too long to start doing any affiliates because I wanted to do the best affiliate site ever. Whereas no, you just need to start. And then you launch something that you will regret later, but it's there. Now you can just fix it. But now you're already learning. I know that this comes from a lot of insecurities because I wanted to be the best. I can't make any mistakes. I want to have the approval of everyone. I saw a message the other day, like you cannot expect everyone to like you. You don't like everyone.
And those are all really good advice. I mean, people younger in their career, especially, listen to this. Hopefully you can apply it. But even older in your career, it's never too late to, learn from somebody else and start applying that in your career and, become better. I think the worst thing you have to look at in a career is stagnation, which is where you feel like, I'm good. I know everything I need to know. And I've met people like that in their career. I've been like that at times in my career, and it's terrible because the only place to go is down at that point. So learn, be honest, open, and learn from, things that you could have done better in the past. And that's why I ask that question every podcast episode, because I feel like we all have things to learn. Everyone's making mistakes. And so learn from the mistakes of people around you. And it's okay. I don't think you can make great progress without making mistakes. Whether, you're an Olympic athlete or whether you're an SEO, you're going to have to stumble along the way to get where you want to go. If you expect to do it without stumbling, you're never going to do it and you're going to stay stagnant.
Yeah, something that I always watch when doing interviews, and I'm hiring now, so I often hear these kind of things again. Are things like, okay, you worked for a year and a half in such company doing SEO, and why did you leave? Oh, because I knew everything already. Okay, it's okay. So these kind of things, they are red flags for me because, they're red flags.
Yeah, good question to ask in your interviews with your new SEOs you're bringing on. Do they know everything? Well, Thiago, if people want to connect with you online, where's the best place for them to find you, and how can they connect?
Well, I did use Twitter for a long time. Now I am a little bit more active on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn/in/Pojda. You will find me. I hope to soon create my website again because, of course, I was perfectionist, insecure, and I never launched my proper site. Now I want to do it. So yeah, we'll be at Pojda.dev.
Pojda.dev. Very good. Thank you so much, Thiago. Appreciate all your insights. Great conversation.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here and an honor.
Cutting Edge Web Content Development is brought to you by Butter CMS. To find out how you can build better with Butter, stop wasting dev time, and free your marketers from your legacy CMS, visit buttercms.com. Also, make sure to search for Cutting Edge Web Content Development in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Butter CMS, thank you for listening.